And so, the one thing I will say about the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative and the drive for that work was that we were not interested in creating 1,000 Black millionaires.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Janelle Williams, proud co-founder and CEO of Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative, a trailblazing nonprofit focused on building collective Black wealth. And today, I'm really excited to be joined by fellow trailblazer, good troublemaker, and co-founder Tené Traylor. Tené, welcome to Black Wealth Unlocked.
Hey, girl.
We're so excited to have you. So we're going to just take off the, niceties and, we'll still keep it professional, but keep it fun. So tell people, girl, how did we meet? Tell them you're going to be my friend.
Okay. I feel like we met in phases. This is so crazy. I feel like we met in phases. I think, I knew you from your work with another foundation. Well, no. I knew you from your work at Casey.
Yeah.
And then just in different circles, we'd seen each other. But when I transitioned from the community foundation over to Candida, we had the most memorable breakfast,
girl,
that we'd ever had.
Girl.
And at that point, I think I fell in love.
Oh, me too, girl.
And we bonded over so many things. And the main thing was we had these major life events that were happening.
No, that's a whole different podcast, girl. That's a whole different podcast.
But we're not going to go there. But we also had this shared understanding that what we were doing was bigger than us.
Yes.
And it was bigger than the moment.
Yes.
And we had a shared interest in supporting Black people.
That's right.
And to be honest with you, that was so refreshing at a time when I was lost. I'd taken on this big new gig and I was looking for someone who understood this journey. And by the time we got to I don't know what breakfast this was, I realized that not only that we had a shared understanding of where we were going to be, we had a shared sense of that our lives were shifting. I also knew I had a partner in love and in crime.
That's right.
To do some amazing work in Atlanta.
That's right.
So, I mean, you've been
kicking
Oh,
it
you know
ever
what?
since.
Let me just say this. Which is, I saw you speak. Remember this?
Girl, I do.
I
know what
saw
you're
you
gonna say.
speak. And I'm not going to get into the whole story, but at the meeting, I was sitting there in the front row. I was like, who is, I knew who you were, but I was like, who is this? It's like I was being reintroduced to you. And you killed it. You were I was like, I'm a fan.
Well, look, let me switch places with you.
No.
And fangirl on this one, though. Let me fangirl on this one
All right.
because we got to talk about the space. Because, we have a beautiful friendship, but not many friendships could evolve into friendships and partnerships.
That's right.
And I think it's really important to talk about the person and the soul, because that really fuels the vision and the integrity of the work, right? So for such a long time, you have been in this field and a sister who's been very clear about being race explicit in a sector that really didn't have many people of color, much less Black women, right? And so I'd love to for you to talk about, your journey in philanthropy in the nonprofit sector and what it meant for you, and also what inspires you, because that's a really important part of this story, and it's a really important artifact that informed the architecture of this organization we created.
Well, I think we have similar journeys in the sense that I think we are rooted in our activism, in our organizing. I am born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm Paige.
404.
All day. And And my work in it, I've always wanted to fight for this city.
Yeah.
You know, when you grow up in Atlanta, you are drenched in history of amazing, transformative leaders, men and women.
Yeah.
And all you want to do, if you get a chance, is to continue the legacy.
Yeah.
And so when I transitioned, or when I left, I was at Georgia State, and I was working at where was I working? The United Way.
Yeah.
In Atlanta. I was doing a lot of activist work, but I was doing a lot of work with young people. And then I left there, and I went to work for. I started to understand this world of philanthropy, and I joined a small family foundation, and then the community foundation, where I really think I cut my teeth in kind of the bigness of Atlanta. And it was because I was doing both, like, community programming work and community grant making work, and I had a chance to sit in the Bluff and help folks with HIV and AIDS support, and supporting groups like Atlanta Harm Reduction. And then I was in off Wyuka Road in Buckhead, just understanding donor life and just understanding the schism in this city.
Yeah.
And so, being a young woman growing up in this space, I got to see a lot of things. Yeah. But what I didn't see a lot of was an explicit commitment to bridge that schism, that divide. Yeah. It didn't make sense that in one city, in less than a mile or two apart, that I could be sitting and having beautiful conversations with people who had limited opportunity.
That's right.
To just drive up the road the next day for a donor meeting where there was nothing but opportunity.
Yeah.
And so when you are exposed to that, and when you look like me, you have a different, the awakening was really real for me.
Yeah.
And while I was doing the work, once I moved to Candida, where I was charged to do the work with an equity portfolio and more resources to manage than I had before.
Yeah.
I knew this was my time to be bold.
Yep.
So in our going back to Carroll Street in that first meeting, you had the same
That's right.
vision.
Because I didn't even know what philanthropy means.
But you were at Casey, so you knew what it meant.
But
you were in the neighborhood.
I was, but as a field, particularly coming from the Caribbean, we didn't have a formalized sector.
But
and
you
then
were
to
organizing.
see all these resources, I was like, the opportunity is here for us to organize ourselves and our resources to do stuff that's much bigger than us. And quite frankly, we talked about it, bigger than our institutions.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, you're absolutely right. And I believe in timing. I believe in seasons. And I think that our friendship actually bloomed at a season where there was fertile soil for it to bloom. And it was really important because, like I said, philanthropy as a sector, a formal sector in the Caribbean isn't largely at scale, right? And so to be a daughter of the Global South, a Black woman doing this work in a sector where there's not a lot of us, certainly I was like, I need to align with values-aligned people, right? I need to lock arms. But this wasn't just a transaction, right? This was really about a friendship that really blossomed into a partnership. And I think it's really important to underscore this, not because it's a love fest, which is important, but change comes at the pace of trust. And many times we have these like exciting goals and results that we want to achieve, but we actually don't have allies. We don't have advocates. We don't have champions that will sustain the work. And so it was so important for me to really invest in this relationship with you, because I know it was not just our relationship. We were investing in something bigger than us.
But you were also doing a body of work where I think you were pushing for an economic justice frame through your portfolio. But I think the ability to leverage that was something that I think that's where we also connected. Like,
Yeah.
not just the dollars, but
Yeah.
our partnerships, how we were thinking. We were leveraging,
right.
we were building from each other.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it's there was a deep sense of urgency. Like, it was great to have, collectively millions to deploy every year, but the urgency of this is what we're dealing with right now, and really being impatient in a healthy way with lackluster outcomes, being impatient with, moving charitable needles and actually deeply dissatisfied with that, I think propelled that, right? And so it's really interesting you named that, because it really wasn't hard to single you out, because there weren't a lot of people that were also doing economic justice work. Let's talk about it. Like, we've seen extensive commitments in, education. We've seen some in like our parks and recs. But when we talk about economic justice, which is
in social service programming, like, I mean, we have plenty of work that is necessary and needed around food assistance and around supportive childcare and around homelessness, which are core needs for any city and any community. But the ability for someone to be thinking, what's beyond homelessness?
That's right.
What's beyond transitional housing?
That's right.
What's beyond a job? What's beyond that?
It's a different question.
It was a different question. And I think it's not that I don't think people wanted to do the work. It's just, I don't know if they had the courage at that point to push beyond kind of these traditional walls of like what folks were comfortable with, to say, I think people deserve more than that. I think Black people deserve more than that.
Yeah.
You had developed this, and I want you to talk about it, which this change in the odds report, that was like, it was the most transformative thing I had read in the city. I mean, you were naming the thing. And I just, that's something that I just don't think we didn't have access to that level of information. We had data centers, but nobody that was assessing and analyzing data and was willing to put it out there the way you were, and the way you were willing to stand behind it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think this is a great segue into how we leverage support from our respective organizations at that time, both KC and Candida, to really think about creating something new, doing something different, to be really race explicit and focus on economic justice. And that really helped inspire the birth of Atlanta Well Building Initiative, right? And really why we felt our region has 8,600 nonprofits. Why create another one?
Yeah.
Why reimagine a new opportunity for yet another nonprofit? And I think it's really important that we talk about this origin story, because it was never designed to be another one. It was never designed to be redundant. So let's talk about wealth and let's talk about like the process by which was really I call this organization my second child. My daughter doesn't know this, but it really was, she took 9 months. This took like 2 years.
Oh my God.
And the labor pains were real. But let's talk about, the AWBI's origin story. And really it was a love story for us, right? In this work.
Yeah. AWBI, we never intended for AWBI. Let me just be clear.
Yep.
We really intended to listen to folks that were doing work every single day to address economic injustice and economic barriers. I mean, we both pulled together not just our grantees and folks that we've been partnering with, but city officials and community leaders, folks who really understood what the economic gaps were and were investing in that work. And we got in that room with them and said, look, as funders, in which that was our role at the time, as funders, what we're going to do is step out.
Yeah.
We did not want this conversation to be, we wanted this conversation to lead to solutions.
That's right.
We had zero intent to think about this in terms of even our own individual portfolios. We set aside and we worked with these groups to say, hey, if you want support, we're going to be here. We're not going anywhere. I think we made good on some of those promises. But mainly, we were like, here's the space to create and dream and think about what would it be like? What would a world look like if we were to address these gaps? And what are the gaps? And that space, I think, facilitated some amazing conversation, some tensions.
Yep.
But also, I do think they put forth a set of recommendations that really helped us understand where we needed to go. And that report exists to this day.
Yeah.
And one of it was a hub that would bring together resources so these groups could continue to do the work that they're doing to address these major economic challenges, but also allow public dollars, private dollars, organizing support space, public policy to be addressed, all those gaps in areas that these groups were working directly with entrepreneurs.
Yep.
Working directly to build economic capital in the workforce and in other ways. And having a hub where all that can come together and they can have a safe space to receive not just support, but partnership.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much energy around having a race explicit organization marrying itself with community well building strategies, right? And
Which was also the mandate.
Which was the mandate. And I think when we commissioned that inaugural report, Shared Prosperity, it was a game changer. And one of our first campaigns, there are many more to come, 1,000 Black Business really was a rallying cry around call to action.
Which was a recommendation. Here we had a city that had one of the highest concentration of Black businesses. And when we looked at Black business value, it was 11 times less than white-owned businesses. No one expected that in the Mecca. No.
Right? And it changed the game. And it opened the door for us to say, no, we got to talk about how are we facilitating a thriving local regional economy? And how are we making sure 4 to 5 Black babies in the city are not living in neighborhood concentrated poverty?
That's right.
How are we calling attention to a city of contradiction? And how are we going to do better? And what's the collective courage around this mandate?
Well, let's talk about the collective, which is Atlanta. We know Atlanta is home to millionaires. We know Atlanta has individuals who have achieved greatness. But we have full communities that are in disrepair. We have full communities where individuals have made a tremendous level of resources, and they do their individualized support and giving. But what we realized was that we couldn't find full communities that mimicked Waiuka Road.
Yeah.
We could not find that. And the question is, what can we do to help support a community, a collective?
That's right.
A group achieve a level of opportunity that they could realize for themselves and for their children. So, the one thing I will say about the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative and the drive for that work was that we were not interested in creating 1,000 Black millionaires.
Yeah.
Like, at least not as a single goal.
That's right.
The goal was, if 1,000 Black millionaires were to be created, there was an economy, there was a localized effort, there was a concentration of shared prosperity and resources that those 1,000 Black millionaires would be able to circulate. We were trying to figure out how to support a circular growth economy in a Black city. Yep. And I think that's really important for people to understand, that we were really trying to drive support, and we still are, a broader conversation than individual wealth, which is something that it's great to be exceptional. It's great to be who we want to name.
That's right.
That's fabulous. And we support these brothers and sisters that have made it. But what happens when you have grown up in a city, when you have been educated in that public system, when you have worked in those public agencies or those homegrown businesses, and you still do not have the advantages of folks who are, to be honest, prospering off your labor?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that is shared? How do we make sure that we push that?
So that gets me to like a broader conversation because, we're still a relatively young organization. And even though we're a relatively young organization, that actually became operationalized during a pandemic, right? And then we had, a series of civil unrest and then market pressures. We saw the economy get even more volatile. We still punched way above our weight. And the impact of this work and even the influence in changing the narrative has been so incredibly important. I am so proud that this organization has leveraged its research, its convening power, its connectivity to partners, and really sounded the alarm on areas where we need to put more dollars in, right? We've served as a watchdog, and we've seen that we've influenced other investors to put money where money needs to go. And we've made bold bets, and we've experimented with new opportunities. And so how do you feel, at this point, 6 years later, really thinking about the arc of our work?
When I think about impact, I was actually thinking about like our approach to how you and I we are so, and you say this all the time, we are values aligned, but we don't always agree.
Girl.
Let's talk about it. But I think when I think about where we are as an organization, your leadership right now and that journey, I think about the fact that we were able to, and I think this is reflective of what we want to see in the work, right? We want to see the tension, but we want to see results. And we want to do it with love.
Yeah.
So when I think about AWBI's journey and I think about like what has gotten us here, I think you and I having the ability to have candid conversations, online, offline, close the door so we can go
over
yell it
tea
out.
or over drinks. It depends on how hard.
Libations. Let's talk about it. But I think, when I think about AWBI is a manifestation, I think of us wanting more.
That's right.
And you just mentioned punching above our weight. And I think it's just because we had each other's backs.
Yeah.
And, and when I think going back to the collective, I think it's important that we understand that I think very naturally Black people are working together to build, or in some ways think about ways to kind of collectively build together. I think that though we oftentimes lack the infrastructure to manifest some of the things that we want to see.
Yeah.
And I think AWBI is a realization of that, right?
Yeah.
It's an infrastructure of us saying that that we couldn't have done this individually. I couldn't have done it. You couldn't have. We needed each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I think about AWBI, when I think about the investments that we quickly made in a pandemic. We'd raised this capital for this new organization because of who we knew, how we were really able to activate resources.
Yeah.
Unapologetically, by the way.
That's right.
Unashamedly, by the way.
That's right.
And we activated that. And I think, that response, the manifesto. The manifesto, being able to articulate what we envisioned for the future of Atlanta and Black communities and Black wealth generally
across the South,
across the world.
Yeah.
I know that's big.
Yeah.
I'm just
saying. I'm here for it, girl. I'm here for it.
But I do think that it's all a part of how we approach this.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think we did. And this isn't us tuning our own back because, we listen to people and then sometimes we didn't listen to people. Let me be clear. But when we listened, I think that also was a driver. We took the time to listen.
Well, you're moving in a place I want us to delve into. So, and you referenced changing the odds. So I'm going to stick with that theme because I think it's important for us to talk about how we share and leverage our lessons learned in this process and not romanticize our resiliency or our journey. Because there were some lessons, there were some ouch points, there were some mistakes, right? But what would be some takeaways we would share with people who want to reimagine possibilities for Black people across the global South, across the world, right? What does that look like? And what are some lessons that we can share so that they're not incurring real-time transaction costs? And let's like pop off, like, because I'll start with one.
You start.
As a kickoff, right? I think it was so incredibly important for us to cultivate investors and get early commitments, because that gave you the runway to dream. That gave you the runway to then create the infrastructure that was needed. And I think getting those early commitments and really being intentional around that was absolutely important. I'd also say board matters, board leadership matters. And I'm really thankful because we have like an amazing board. And no, I'm not sharing any board members, right? No, we operate in a spirit of abundance. But I think board matters, board leadership matters, and really having board members that are deeply value aligned and bring deep content expertise to challenge and inspire the work was incredibly important.
Well, I'm going to go back to kind of what the challenges were, which is buy-in. That was hard.
Yeah.
In 2016 and 2017, all this explicit Black talk was not cool. Let me be clear. We were still moving from the coded language of marginalized, historically marginalized,
underrepresented,
disinvested. Like we were in the whole nother language sphere in 2016, 2017. We hadn't even gotten to the point of saying racial equity. Let me be clear. We had not gotten there. We just gotten to equity. So I think it was, I agree, like having those, but it was a few. It wasn't a lot. We got a lot of no's. Yep. We got a lot of not nows.
Yep.
We got a lot of, what is social equity? What is that? From people who look like us.
Yes.
In a Black city. I would say that was hard. And it was a lot of us saying like, well, who said no to you today?
Yeah.
It was a lot of, well, let's take this approach.
Yeah.
And they don't get it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of they don't get it.
Well, I think a really important piece around the lessons learned here was the non-negotiable.
Girl.
And the non-negotiable for us was always about being race explicit.
Yeah.
If we could not walk into this room with an unapologetic race explicit lens, we wouldn't be in this room. And that was clear for us. And I think that was a really important non-negotiable to hold and protect.
And because that is what the data said.
That's right.
Let me be clear. Like, yes, I stand very confidently in my Blackness. And the data said that Black folks were in the divide. Like we couldn't close a gap.
Yeah.
We were just in it. Yeah. There were stark disparities economically, educationally, health. Every disparity. That change in the odds report was just as clear as day. So we had to be explicit. If you wanted to see change, you had to see the communities that were going to be most impacted, period.
That's right.
And whether or not people wanted to accept that, we could show them the data.
That's right.
And I think that the fact that people were willing to code it, to say, well, why aren't you just doing it? Why can't we just work on jobs?
That's right.
And we're like, no, we're talking about wealth.
We're talking about wealth.
And at that time, the data was telling us, and that's why the manifesto is so beautiful, but it was 228 years to close. At that time, the language was to close the racial wealth gap.
That's right.
That's if all things remain still.
And wealth never remains still. It doesn't hold constant.
So how in the world were we going to address that?
That's right.
And so what I'm saying is that it was just much more, it was really hard.
Yeah.
And we were in a pretty privileged position, let me just say. And I just want to recognize that journey between 2016, 2018, when we went to Detroit, maybe.
Yeah.
And we were recruiting board members. We were very thoughtful about that founding board.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just think that all of that was really, I know the lunches that I had. They were in the conversations that I had online and offline, and they were tough.
So we think about this journey and the arc of this journey, and you're right. When we started, there was this focus on the racial wealth divide, and we've recently released this freshly minted manifesto, Our Beloved Economy, the Imperative to Build Black Wealth. You can find it on our website, which really is a love letter around why invest in building Black wealth. And it's a pivot around the intentional framing of our work to us being bolder and for us being even more explicit and leading with an unapologetically Black agenda. And that has created chatter, which is great by design. But I'd love for us to talk about, for this version of our work, the time we're in, why it is so absolutely critically important for us to build collective Black wealth.
Look, we came out of 2019 and 2020 like there was no tomorrow. Like, we had a pandemic, we had a bunch of stuff. And I think this bold forward work that you've put forth as the leader of AWBI, the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative, is so important for us to understand that 2020, 2019 was not an anomaly. It was not a phenomenon.
That's right.
It was the push. It was what we needed to be more explicit. Say the time is now. That's right. One of the things that I love about the manifesto, besides so many things, but it was the redefinition that we need to look at how we've defined wealth for Black communities. That whole section is really important for people to understand, because the way wealth shows up for a community, like for Black folks, it needs to look different than it does for white folk. It just does. And when I think about where AWBI is going and where you and this team and us as a board and being a co-founder, where we're going, I think it's around, right now is not enough.
That's right.
It's about saying we want to manifest a destiny for our children that we dictate.
That's right. That's right. And this is why we have to redefine what wealth looks like and what it means, and wrestle with the nuances and the textures of that, right? When we think about like a Webster definition of wealth, it's like assets minus liabilities. Yeah. But that is so woefully insufficient because we see people with net worth, but they still can't buy where they want, how they want, if they want, right? And so this broader conversation about the collective, which is so important as well, Black wealth, is really looking at a broader construct of wealth that transcends like economic definitions. We're looking at what it means for environment and climate, what it means for our health, what it means for our civic infrastructure. So we actually have the power to create the type of realities we need for ourselves, our communities, our babies. And I think that's so important.
Let me just say, for every community, culture sits at the epicenter of their economic growth.
That's right.
Period.
That's right.
There is no community where culture does not sit at it's as a central driver.
That's right.
We're no exception.
That's right.
And we see that. And so for us to limit ourselves to a structure that lacks that is
such a dilution of who we are.
Totally.
Such a dilution of who we are and why.
And we're seeing that. We're seeing how our entrepreneurs are leaning into cultural cultural connectivity, interconnectivity. We're seeing how it's driving how we talk to each other about wealth, how we talk to each other about stability, how we talk to each other about how our communities thrive, how our children thrive. Right. And I think that is important. I think it's important for us to understand that for us, while we are and what AWBI is doing in its evolution, which it's just so exciting to see that we can evolve. Let's talk about that. Because that was one of the things that we had as a mandate, that we would be nimble, we would be flexible, and we would be responsive. And I think that is really important to where we are right now. And so, I mean, I'm so excited about the products that are coming out of AWBI, because I think what it is, it's grounding us in where we're supposed to be.
That's right. And I I think this is a great segue into, we talked about our past, our present, but our future.
Say it.
Right? And I think what makes us still around as a young organization that survives so many different things, it's because you have to be predictive.
Yeah.
You have to see patterns before they actually form.
Yeah.
Right? You got to be ahead of your curve. And so as co-founder, what do you hope for the future of AWBI?
Oh, man. So many things. The future of AWBI, I see us transcending beyond and inclusive of the work that we're doing in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I see us looking across the South and locking arms with other cities and other communities that are looking to have a bold conversation. I see us reaching beyond our domestic walls and looking to other parts of the world that look like us, that we have influenced, which pretty much is every corner of the world. So I see AWBI being the launch pad.
Yeah.
And I think all these lessons that we're learning now, all the framing, will also evolve.
Yeah.
And I think that is the healthy part. I think that is how Black people have evolved in this country and in this community and in this world. And I see AWBI continuing to do so. So whether it's how we raise capital, whether it's how we do our research, how we shift policy, how we initiate new ideas.
That's right.
I think all of that is rooted in us being responsive to the growth and to the needs of Black people.
That's absolutely right.
And so that's what I think about AWBI's future.
You know, and I'll say, because I'm with you on the scale of this work and the possibility of this work, that we will always be anchored to Atlanta. You know, one of the things my dad used to say, as he disciplined me, was that true love is never void of accountability. And I think, you know, our work and Atlanta will always be such an integral part of our story. She's part of our love story and our journey because it's where we've started.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're so excited about what lies ahead and what's next. You know, before we close off, I always like to ask guests of Black Wealth Unlocked, what does Black wealth mean to you? It's not a gut question, not an academic question, but we understand that this is a very nuanced topic. And so in your own words, Tené Traylor, what does Black wealth mean to you?
It means culture. It means family. And it means community. Because you need all of that to manifest wealth.
I love it. Well, there you have it. I am Dr. Janelle Williams, host of Black Wealth Unlocked. Please tune in and register to participate in our November 1st beloved Economy Building Black Wealth in Atlanta inaugural report launch. It will be held at the Center for Civil and Human Rights. Please also check out our website, www.atlantawealthbuilding.org. And please make sure that you connect, commit, and contribute to the Black Wealth movement. Thank you for joining us.